Commuting through the downtown has gone from bad to worse.
Even this morning, I almost didn't make it to work on time.
Why restrictions along King Street meant to move streetcars faster has done the opposite, and what the TTC is saying in response.
There's less and less options for people, and so people are going to find wherever they can go to survive.
Plus, an escalating emergency in the ER. A new study finds a startling jump in hospital visits as Toronto's homelessness crisis intensifies.
Now they're trying to go beyond that and reach out directly to the people and have them involved. So it's wonderful.
And the good vibes this cafe is brewing. We'll show you how a partnership with Meals on Wheels is trying to reach people in a new way. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We're starting tonight with new data on the commute through the downtown. Streetcar travel along King Street sped up a few years ago after major restrictions came into effect for cars. But now we're learning those commute times have edged back up, and now worse than ever before those rules were even implemented. And a new study is putting pressure squarely on enforcement. Anam Khan is live on King Street tonight. Anam, you spent the evening rush there. How was the commute today?
Chris, well, at this hour, things seem to be moving pretty smoothly. But just over a few hours ago, we were hearing from people who abandoned their streetcar altogether and chose to walk home instead. And we put the findings of this UFT study to the TTC, and the transit agency seemed to pass the buck on the police for a lack of enforcement. Selena Campbell is one of thousands of people who take the streetcar on King Street daily. And like many, she says she's unable to get to places on time.
Even this morning, I almost didn't make it to work on time.
Back in 2017, a pilot project by the city put in traffic restrictions to stop cars from driving straight or turning at some intersections on King Street in the downtown from Bathurst to Jarvis. 2 years later, the project became permanent after city staff found the pilot had shortened travel times. But this video was taken just last week, showing over a dozen streetcars backed up in traffic on King Street through the downtown. The TTC's own data shows before the pilot, back in 2017, travel time along this stretch of King was 26 minutes. After the restrictions were enforced in 2018, it dropped to 18 minutes. But now it's higher than ever at 29 minutes. Now, a new UFT study analyzing data from the last 7 years shows traffic may be moving so slowly because of a lack of enforcement. In a statement, the authors of the study said, there are approximately 6,800 illegal turns and through movements at intersections per day on the King Street Transit Priority Corridor. And the study found more than 99.9% of drivers are not being fined for breaking the law. The TTC agrees enforcement is an issue.
We do know that that's happening, and it is impacting our service.
Sure.
You know, we've seen trip times now between Bathurst and Jarvis that are as bad or worse than they were prior to the introduction of that priority corridor.
Councillor Chris Moyes says technology is a better solution than officers.
We have red light cameras in the city. We have speed cameras in the city. Why not look at automated traffic enforcement as well?
Earlier this month, his motion to look into implementing automated traffic enforcement passed at council. A report is due back next year.
We cannot expect the police to be on duty enforcing traffic 24/7 on King Street.
I reached out to the police to ask them about the enforcement on King Street, and they didn't get back to us. And still, the authors of the study and the counselor, they both agree that whether you're enforcing this through officers or through automation, it's still going to help move this stretch faster, and it's going to help get more revenue through fines.
Thank you, Anam. CBC's Anam Khan reporting live tonight on King Street in the downtown. New details tonight on our top story from last night. The Ford government tabling legislation for its new financial deal with Toronto. Part of the bill will allow the province to fast-track the redevelopment of Ontario Place. Dale Manukduk has that story.
They got caught breaking the rules, so now they're changing the rules. That's what's happening.
Question period got heated today over the province's new legislation that would get construction of a private megaspot at Ontario Place underway.
Mr. Speaker, I will never be afraid to present legislation in order to build infrastructure in the province of Ontario.
Bill 154, which includes the Rebuilding Ontario Place Act, features exemptions or laws the government can circumvent on this project. It would expand the Minister of Infrastructure's powers under the Planning Act, exempt the province from the Environmental Assessment Act, and says the Heritage Act won't be applied to portions of Ontario Place.
They're waiving the Environmental Assessment Act completely, and they're waiving our Environmental Bill of Rights. So I don't see a lot of daylight between this and waiving the notwithstanding clause.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, Therme Spa has got to go.
Norm DiPasquale is with Ontario Place for All, a group taking the province to court over not doing an environmental assessment on the West Island. The infrastructure minister says the government has done its due diligence.
Over 40 different studies, arborist study, shoreline study, water study, soil study, all of that has been submitted.
The minister's lying. That's not true. There has not been an environmental assessment of the West Island where Therma is going to be located.
The minister's office tells CBC Toronto for the West Island, Austrian company Therma has undertaken a number of studies. But more questions surround the project, like the details of the lease agreement between Ontario and Therma.
There's no transparency, none whatsoever. It's a big deal. It's in the crown jewel of what you would call the downtown Toronto, city of Toronto, or maybe even Ontario.
If Doug Ford thinks that his deal with the Mayor of Toronto is going to lead to no more opposition to privatizing Ontario Place, he's wrong.
According to the mayor who appeared on CBC's Metro Morning, the province is already forging ahead and expropriating Toronto's sliver of Ontario Place land.
Because we won't give them the land. So we still didn't give them the land, they're just taking it.
Simply to force this one pet project through. It is a very dangerous precedent that the government is setting.
Ontario Place for All says its lawyers are reviewing how this legislation, if passed, would impact their legal action. Until then, they plan to go to Queen's Park to voice their opposition. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
That new financial agreement with the province is also meant to free up cash so the city can improve services like the struggling shelter system. And as we deal with one of the first really cold nights of the season tonight, a new study to tell you about that found an alarming rise in people using hospital emergency rooms as a place to escape the cold. Greg Ross has more on the study and what advocates say needs to be done.
As temperatures dip well below freezing tonight, hundreds living on Toronto streets will need to find somewhere warm to go. A new study released today suggests there has been a huge increase in people turning to hospital emergency rooms in the past year.
We saw an approximately almost 30% jump across the province, but a really significant increase of almost 70% in the city of Toronto.
Dr. Stephen Hwang is one of the co-authors of the study. He says in these cases, people looking to escape the cold will simply come in and ask to see a doctor with an issue that is not urgent.
They'll be checked in and seen. Typically, they'll spend a couple of hours sitting in the waiting room, sometimes many hours, before a physician sees them and says that they're fine to go.
It's absolutely not surprising, completely predictable.
Lorraine Lamb is an outreach worker. She says the problem is many of the city's shelters are already at capacity.
The reality of homelessness is that it's worsening and there's less and less options for people. And so people are going to find wherever they can go to survive. There's not a lot of places that are open 24/7, but hospitals are.
For the first time this winter season, the city will be opening warming centers to offer those in need a place to go. But only 3 of 4 designated warming centers will be operational tonight.
So in total, there's 146 spaces that will be provided to individuals that need to come indoors.
Lamb says this is not good enough.
We know that winter is coming every year. Why were these things not in place earlier so that we're adequately prepared? Every year it feels like we're scrambling after the first snowfall or after the first cold snap.
The city says they are looking to open more spaces in the coming weeks. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
-4 and still a pretty good chance of flurries overnight as we look live at the city tonight. Let's get Colette Kennedy into the conversation now. And Colette, just a light dusting in the downtown today might catch people off guard to hear what happened north and west of the city today.
I know, Chris, right? Like such a contrast. You could just have a few flurries flying in the city and elsewhere near whiteout conditions with these snow squalls. And because this is kind of the biggest event we're getting back into this season, so far we're just ramping things up. It takes a little bit to get used to. And as we see those winds shifting direction, it means all the areas that have been in warnings, then the winds go more west to southwesterly, and we'll see them targeting areas into the east of Georgian Bay around Perry Sound. So that's why the watch is in play there, and eventually likely having those warnings kind of shifting in that direction. So they are highly localized. We do know that, but some areas still looking at the potential for additional 10 to 15 centimeters on top of what you've already seen. As we get into Wednesday, we are going to hold some cloud cover into the city, and we will see some scattered flurries through the day as well through the GTA. -5 tonight, feeling like -12 to -14, and then that daytime high 0 tomorrow, Chris. But after that, we are going to see those temperatures turning around. More on that coming up.
All right. I bet a lot of people will want to hear about that. Thank you, Colette. Now up to Kiel and Lawrence, and an elderly man is in critical condition in hospital tonight after being hit by a vehicle in a plaza parking lot. Just before 11 this morning, the man in his 90s was in a crosswalk in the lot when he was struck. Police say the car that hit him had just entered from Lawrence Avenue and was traveling at a high rate of speed. The victim was taken to hospital where he is in life-threatening condition. Officers say the driver remained at the scene. In Markham, a man has been charged with first-degree murder after a woman from BC was found dead at a home over the weekend.
We have identified the 34-year-old female as Shi Guo of British Columbia. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. A 34-year-old male from Markham, Chow Ji Lee, has been charged with her first-degree murder.
So police initially got a call for unknown trouble at a home near Steeles and McCowan late Sunday night. Investigators say the victim and the accused were in a relationship. An autopsy is being done to determine how she died. And police say the accused also suffered serious injuries and is in hospital. Taking you next to the University Avenue courthouse, where a 21-year-old man who used a sword to stab a woman to death in a Toronto massage parlor has been sentenced to life in prison for the murder. The man, who was 17 at the time, pleaded guilty last year to 1 count of murder and 1 count of attempted murder in the February 2020 attack. He admitted that he stabbed the 24-year-old woman 42 times and seriously injured a second woman who tried to take the sword from him. Court heard that he was inspired by the incel movement. That prompted a judge to rule the attack was an act of terror. The judge handing him an adult life sentence today, adding that a youth sentence wouldn't be enough. Megan Fitzpatrick has more from the courthouse.
The judge taking into account that he says the accused has shown little interest in rehabilitation programs. He said this murder reflects the evil of the incel ideology. And he said, yes, while the accused pleaded guilty, there was overwhelming evidence against him, including surveillance video that captured the entire murder. So the judge saying because of the seriousness and the nature of the murder, that this case requires a life sentence. So in this case now, the murderer will be allowed to apply for parole after 10 years. Normally it's 25 years for a first-degree conviction, murder conviction, but given that he was a youth at the time, it'll be 10 years before he can apply for parole. That doesn't mean he'll get it. It just means he can apply for parole after 10 years.
Megan Fitzpatrick reporting from the... Returning now with a story of generosity out of Toronto's East End. After a theft at a laundromat in the Beach, the owner decided to turn the moment into an opportunity to help other people. We're profiling the story in honor of Giving Tuesday, a global movement celebrating charitable acts. Patrick Swadden has more.
There's no easy moral answer. As we were talking earlier, how cold do you have to be before you're justified in stealing a sweater?
That's the question Alex Winch, who owns this laundromat in the Beach, has been mulling over since a woman came into Beach Solar Laundromat earlier this month and took 2 sweaters from a dryer in use by another customer. When Winch confronted her later that night, she said,
"I'm effing freezing." And I said, "Well, what about the woman whose sweaters you've taken?" And she said, "Well, she's got a home and I'm homeless."
And that gave him immediate pause. He didn't call the police, instead setting up a coat rack outside his other business next door, a dry cleaner's, for people to leave a coat or take a coat.
This coat is new in the last 3 hours. This one is new in the last 5 hours. This one came in yesterday evening. This one, I couldn't even tell you when it came in, but I haven't seen it before.
In the 6 days it's been up, he says over 40 coats have passed through the rack.
It's there without a lock and key on it. So if somebody is cold at 2 in the morning, they can get a coat. They're not stealing, they're receiving a donation.
He's hoping the idea sparks others to do the same as Toronto grapples with homelessness and plunging temperatures.
We see demand for our services over the year has gone up.
McCormack says Fred Victor helps around 3,000 people a day with meals and transitional housing, but they have little left over to provide warm winter clothing.
Very few charities that are helping folks who are homeless and experiencing poverty have the capacity to pick stuff up.
1 in 5 Canadians currently relies on charities for essential services like food and shelter, and that means requests for winter clothing often exceed local charity supply.
We definitely have seen an increase in the need for warm clothing here.
Underscoring the need this Giving Tuesday for generosity.
We've really have been trying our best to keep up. I'd love them to understand how important it is to get this influx of donations to be able to serve our clients the most efficiently and effectively.
For Winch, he's thrilled by his neighborhood's generosity, but
there are neighborhoods across the city that are that generous and are that caring, given the opportunity, given a platform to give. Many people want to give.
Patrick Swadden, CBC News, Toronto.
Next to Toronto's Thorncliffe neighborhood, and another good initiative to tell you about, the Common Ground Cafe is teaming up with Meals on Wheels to offer a pay-it-forward model when buying coffee or a snack. CBC Toronto got a sneak peek inside.
So Eastbrook Meals on Wheels has been working for months to put together this cafe to provide a dignified approach to food insecurity. Let's invite people into a warming atmosphere where we can serve them something nice to drink and work through some of the food access issues that they may be experiencing. A customer comes into our cafe, they have the option to select when they register for our points card, whether they would like to donate their points or whether they would like to be the recipient of those points. Most unique factors is that our cafe is run by a social worker, so somebody who understands the complexities of people who are food insecure.
It's actually pretty interesting because I get to learn about people in like a very more non-social work lens. They want to get with Meals on Wheels, they want to do an intake, they want further programs, so I deal with those programs. So essentially what they can do is ask for any other additional support they want. I give them their card and then we can set up an appointment.
I get Meals on Wheels and it's a wonderful service, but I think now they're trying to go beyond that and reach out to the directly to the people and have them involved. So it's wonderful. It's a big challenge though.
I think the location is really good because it's so bright and the first place in the plaza, it will attract a lot of people there. You know, people are rather intimidated to stretch out, to sort of, not to stretch, to extend out, that, you know, they need help. But once they get the contact and everything, then they begin to know the place and they see what is available. And I think that will help them.
The cafe is open right now on Wednesdays and Fridays, and we're hoping to grow that as soon as the support comes in and as soon as we start seeing more people using the cafe. So we're really here to try to encourage more people from the community to come out and see us, to purchase a cafe and pay it forward.
Last word again tonight to you, Colette. And snow squalls for many people in our region today, but here in the downtown, just some bitter wind to contend with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a situation like that. So you could be in the sunshine in the city, and then you cross the street, and with those winds, especially blowing between the buildings, and then you're in the shade, wow, you can really feel that wind chill factor. And those winds changing direction, that's going to shift where those squalls are happening, as I was showing you earlier in the show. So more west to then southwesterly flow will move the direction there coming off of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. The Wednesday morning, yes, tomorrow morning, it is another chilly start for us. Temperatures and then those winds still driving in here. But the real change comes on Thursday. It's not too bad Wednesday night, but Thursday, big differences. Hold on for a moment and we'll get to some of those numbers. As we get through the night tonight into tomorrow morning, then we get into a situation, yes, around Parry Sound, you'll be dealing with some of these, and along the Bruce Peninsula, some of these snow squalls still. But you see the cloud cover extending from eastern Ontario across the lower Great Lakes into southwestern Ontario. And we do get into a situation with kind of scattered flurries into the afternoon. Later afternoon, you may get some breaks here. Windsor over towards Leamington, Harrow, up towards Chatham, Kent. But for the GTA, all around the Golden Horseshoe, there will be maybe even a dusting of snowfall once we put this all together through the day on Wednesday. Thursday, some clouds to start, but then, yes, that cloud deck should pull away and we'll get into some sunshine. Plus, if we couple that with some milder temperatures, things are really going to feel so differently on Thursday. But let's get through those winds. There's that more southwesterly direction that they go to as we head to tomorrow, and that shifts all those streamers off the lake. Overnight tonight, your temperatures are cold enough, but then you got to factor in the winds. Minus 15, essentially, that wind chill for southwestern Ontario, and near to minus 13 for the wind chill for us through the GTA and beyond. But 0 tomorrow. There it is, the big reveal, Chris. 7 degrees on Thursday. I'm going with that one as the best day of the week, and then some mixed precipitation into the weekend.
All right, already looking forward to Thursday. Thank you, Colette. Just have to get through tonight first. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. And we'll leave you with this scene in the Junction tonight. People braving the cold temperatures to take in the sights and sounds of the CP Holiday Train. We'll see you tomorrow.